Hey guys, some of you may recall this set that I restored 2 or 3 years ago. It's a GE810. Well, I want to do a little bit of work to it. I've been asked a few times if I ever need to go back and do some tune-ups on my sets. Well, yeah, I do. In particular, I'm going to be going over some of the earliest sets I restored, because back when I did them, I didn't have some of the nice test equipment that I have now, like a good sweep generator or a high-quality tube tester. And sets age. I mean, there were servicemen back then. Well, just like then, you need to service these sets now. Tubes start going bad, resistors drift off value, especially if you left some of the originals in there. But what I really want to do on this set first is refinish the cabinet. Weather will be cold before too long, and I want to get going on this. In fact, I've already started. I stripped the cabinet, and I figured, what the heck, I might as well start recording some video on this. So why am I refinishing the cabinet when I already refinished it? If you recall, when I got this set, the finish was in poor condition and there was some veneer loss on the top, and what veneer was left was falling off, so I just re-veneered the whole top. And it came out and looked quite nice, but after I had this set playing for a while, a problem developed. And that is little bubbles started to appear in the finish. I think that's because I ended up using shellac to fill the grain. Also probably didn't help that I had some newspapers and magazines on top of the set while it was playing, which kind of held the heat in. But I think it was more an issue with the shellac. See, I tried using some water-based Bellin's grain filler on this, but it came out looking really light gray. It looked really bad, so I took it off, ended up putting on a coat after heavy coat of shellac, and sanded down until it was perfectly smooth. So this is mahogany, it's fairly porous, so all these pores were filled in with just really thick shellac, and I think that is maybe what bubbled up. So it's actually about as easy as cabinets go in terms of refinishing. I'm just going to strip it down, fill the grain with Constantine's paste wood filler like I've been using for the past couple years. And then I used Van Dyke walnut toner. I'll use that again, and then put on some clear coat on top of that. I say easy because it's just a box. This front part all comes off. I don't know, I may go over this again too. Got a little bit of chipping up here. But otherwise, just 3 sides, that's it. Just a couple vent slots here, but no masking, no two-tone, nothing. It's just a mahogany box. Something else, that recent Arky Radio Swap Fest, I got some knobs, and I'm really glad I did. One of the things I really hated about this set is that the knobs I had on it were fairly useless. A lot of these knobs, they would just spin and spin and spin. This one's not too bad. Let me try one of these guys. What happened is yeah, here's one. Yeah, kind of frustrating to adjust the set when the knobs don't do anything. What happened was the knobs are supposed to have plastic slots in them, and like this one still has them intact. You can see down in there. Whereas on these, they're gone. So these shafts are split down the middle, and that plastic is supposed to slide in there and really grip onto the shaft. Well, these, probably from people cranking on the knobs too hard over the years, the middle plastic bits all broke loose. Well, I didn't get a complete set of 4, but I got 3 of them. And they're in really nice shape. The plastic is in really good shape, and they work quite nicely. Alright, so another thing I want to do too is I haven't played this set in a while, and I imagine I can use a tune-up. Especially because when I restored this, I did not do an alignment, and I didn't have some of the nice gear I have now, like good quality mutual conductance tube tester. So I'll test all the tubes, replace any that are weak or leaky, do an alignment, get this thing all tuned up. And finally, maybe, I might do something about this grill cloth. This is not the original. If you recall, the original was kind of fraying and it was dirty, and I cleaned it and it kind of shrunk and it was kind of falling apart, but I still have it. And this is actually just burlap. I just bleached some burlap and put it on there. It's okay, you know, it's better than nothing, but it's not the original. It's not quite right. So I think I might take a stab at trying to put the original grill cloth back on. I've never been too good with grill cloth, but I've been reading up on various techniques. I think I have a little bit more patience now, and I figure I can give it a shot. What have I got to lose? But first things first, I want to get this cabinet going. So I clear some space, take the back off this, get the chassis out, get this front removed, finish stripping it, and start going with the grain filler. Here's the cabinet completely stripped down, and I pulled off that canvas grill cloth. Deal with that after I refinish the cabinet. Also want to redo this. I was never particularly happy about this color. The original seemed to be a really pale green, and this is just too greenish. This is really the kind of look I was going for, like you see in this Motorola, which is a light gray with maybe a hint of blue or green in it. More blue than green. Anyways, what I've got on hand is several types of off-white, so I think I'll just go with that, or maybe light gray. Alright, but next up I want to spray some lacquer sanding sealer on this, light sanding, and then put on the grain filler. I will be using Constantine's as usual. I want to get that grain filler going because I like to let it sit for at least a day. And now that the weather's gotten rather cool, down into the 50s at night, I think I'll let it go 2 days before I continue on with the layers of finish. Although this veneer is mahogany, which is generally pretty open grain, this is a fairly tight grain veneer, so it's pretty easy to fill in. I'm just using this stuff straight out of the can. I usually would thin it down, but I'm just scrubbing it on with a brush. It'll dry pretty quick, and I'll scrape off the excess, and that'll be that. I think one pass will be sufficient. By contrast, I've been working on the lid for my 630 TS. It took me a full 3 passes to get this grain filled, and it's still not 100%, but I think it's as good as I'm ever going to get it. Very open grained mahogany. I haven't sanded it down yet, so you can still see it's kind of splotchy in areas for me. Scraping off the excess grain filler. And by the way, this is another reason why I decided to do this GE 810 set again now, is that I'm working on this RCA 630 TS, and I figured, well, instead of just doing one, I might as well do 2 while I've got all the supplies out. Oh, I should mention, the reason that these look so different is that this is quarter cut veneer and this is face cut. That has to do with how they slice up the log to make the veneer. Quarter cut typically has the very prominent stripes, whereas face cut has prominent patterns. Typically this would be like bookends, so you see like here we've got a swirl and a swirl, or ovals or various waviness, and that's what you get with face cut. I finished filling in the grain on the top last night, and it's nice and smooth now. Next up comes one of the sides. So, open up my can of grain filler. Quick mix. What stuff looks like. I have both walnut and red mahogany. To me, they both look pretty darn much the same. It's just dark brown. And especially once you put toner over it. I really don't think it makes much difference which one you use. Just going to salvage some of the material off of the screwdriver I just used to stir the can with. Because the only source I have for this is to order it directly from Constantine's. It's not real expensive. 10-15 bucks a can, but gotta pay for shipping, gotta wait a week or two for it to arrive, so I like to use it sparingly. So I'm just slopping it on with a brush, making sure I work it in really good. And once I get it spread all over the cabinet, I will start scraping it around with an old credit card. Making sure I really work it in good. Really though, I want to wait until it gets a bit thicker, till it dries out a bit before I worry too much about the credit card, because it's so liquidy now. If I spread this all out and got it perfectly filled in, it's going to shrink as it dries. So I would end up having to do a second pass. So I'll wait till this gets quite a bit thicker and stiffer before I scrape off all the excess. While I wait for that grain filler to set up, enjoy some bacon frying. You can see the filler's turning grayish in areas. That means it's set up pretty good. So what I'm doing now is going at a 45-degree angle, and as I pick up the excess on the edge of the card, I kind of smear it in and then scrape again to make sure that I'm really filling in all the pores. I kind of mix up the angle a bit as I go to make sure I really fill it all in. And if after it dries it looks a bit crummy in some areas because you got some excess on there, like here, you just sand it off. That's why it's a good idea to put on a few layers of sanding sealer. One is so that the pigment and the filler isn't going onto bare wood, because it would turn this whole thing quite a bit darker if I did. And two, after the filler dries, you can sand it a bit and you won't have to worry about it going down to the bare wood. If you sand lightly, you'll just be sanding off the excess filler and a bit of the sanding sealer. Especially important if you stain. So if you'd stained the wood, then sealed it, then put on the grain filler, and then sanded it, and you went down through the sanding sealer into the stained wood, you'd end up with a white patch, and you'd have to stain that again, and hopefully you could blend it out. But in this case, I didn't stain it all because I'm going to be using toner lacquer. Plus, the natural color of this isn't all that different from what I want the final color to be anyways. I'll be going with Van Dyke Walnut like I did the first time around when I refinish this. Not exactly the stock color, but I've got a few cans of it and I like the way it looks. So that's what I'm going to use. Okay, I finished applying grain filler to all three sides. Now I'll let this sit for a couple days and fully set up. In the meantime, I'll go back to working on other projects.